So I know some of you have to be thinking, why in the world are we spending a month of Sundays talking about Taylor Swift? Unless you live under a rock, you've heard of Taylor Swift. My intent here is not to get you to listen to her music, to like her music. That really doesn't matter to me. She's a tremendous influence in our society, particularly among the younger generation. They're listening to her message, whether they're in the church pews or not, they're listening to that message. What message is she sharing? Just a little bit of backstory. A few years ago, there was an article called The Gospel of Taylor Swift. I read that article with interest. I knew of her, but didn't really, again, I'm not a fan necessarily, so I read it but I thought that an author would put theological and biblical criteria on her life and her lyrics was very interesting. It reminded me of an old book that I have on my, yellowing on my shelf called The Gospel According to Peanuts. Charlie Brown Linus. It's an old book, a classic. Do you have it, Joanne? Yeah, I'm sure you have it too. Then, about 2 years ago, the Church of the Holy Spirit in Heidelberg, Germany, decided to do a whole service on Taylor Swift, the entire liturgy. Now, this is a vintage church. It's a traditional church. Gail and I had an opportunity to visit there a few years ago. It is a partner church with the EKD, UCC and the EKD. I've done lots of work with global partnerships, particularly with Germany. We were there, and you know this church because if you were raised on the Heidelberg Catechism, who remembers the Heidelberg Catechism? That's what I went through in confirmation. That's the church which gave birth to the Heidelberg Catechism. This is no avant-garde church, a very traditional church. And so I saw an Instagram meme, not designed to me, but it was challenging preachers to develop a series on Taylor Swift. I took that up. But I had to begin with some help. So I asked a true Swiftie and a very good friend, Heintzelman. And so Erin, if you'll please come up and join me here, and we're gonna have a dialogue because she is a Swiftie. Now, I grew up in Nutropoli, and when somebody called you a Swiftie, it was not necessarily a good thing. It's been reinterpreted. So Erin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Do we have it on? Okay, good.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us what it is that's so attractive about Taylor Swift's music and the lyrics, her life, and so on.
So I became a Taylor Swift fan probably when I was the age of some of the kids that were here a couple minutes ago. Mm-hmm. She became popular almost 20 years ago. And so I was in the end of elementary school, the beginning of middle school, and I was listening to the songs that she was putting out that she was writing herself at 14, 15 years old. And I'm a little younger than she is. I think she's in her mid-30s and I'm in my late 20s. And so as she was putting out songs, I was going through what she sang about, maybe 3-4 years earlier. And so I related to that along with obviously many other people. Mm-hmm. And so I've really enjoyed being a Taylor Swift fan.
Oh, cool. And can I just say, you traveled actually to Europe, to Amsterdam for one of her concerts. So you made an investment of time and money just to be there, not so much for the tourist part, but just to hear her sing.
Yes, so I've seen Taylor Swift in concert a couple times. In fact, I saw someone in the congregation wearing a beautiful sequin dress that would look perfect in a Taylor Swift concert. And I've seen her throughout the years, but most recently, I went and saw her in the Netherlands with my cousin, who she has a family of her own. She doesn't live near me, but we both grew up listening to Taylor Swift, and so for the both of us to meet in Europe and see Taylor was something I'll remember for the rest of my life. Something that I found just really, really interesting is obviously in the Netherlands, English isn't necessarily the easiest language for them to speak. They oftentimes speak in Dutch. Mm-hmm. And here's Taylor Swift, a Pennsylvanian-born girl who's just a few years older than I am, singing to 60,000 people where the primary language is in English. And they're not just listening to the music, they're not just like quietly singing, they're screaming these lyrics. And you wouldn't know that they actually speak Dutch and it's not their primary language. And the parts of the concert that I remember, because I did have the privilege of seeing her in the United States last year as well, the parts of the concert transcend through the whole world. So, the idea of getting dressed up and wearing your best sequin dress or your best 13 on your hand or whatever it may be that makes you feel like you're a part of this, Taylor Swift fan situation that's taken over the world, has transcended through the entire world, which is just crazy because she was born in Berks County, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. No, why missing? So among the themes that we're going to talk about the next few weeks is one is resiliency that you helped me to identify. So can you talk more about how you hear that, experience that with, again, her life and lyrics?
Absolutely. So I'm sure those that are older in this congregation have heard media scrutiny of Taylor Swift. Like the things that if you're not really following her, you hear the headlines, which are, she dates a lot of men, or she sings aloud, she scrutinizes people, and things like that. And so what she's had to overcome in her life, in terms of proving herself over and over again, that not only is she worthy of her talent, but she's worthy of being where she's at. And a lot of folks will say she's maybe not the strongest singer. I would probably say that too. She's not like Mariah Carey or sometimes like Adele, things like that, those powerhouse vocals. But I think what separates her mostly, and one of the kids said it earlier, is she's a songwriter first. And so she takes her life, puts it into these songs, and tells a story with it. And that is how she's proven day in and day out how resilient she is.
Mm-hmm. And certainly we're living in challenging times, right? So resiliency, and when people, we don't know what truth is anymore, people can say lies about us and make life very difficult for us. So
absolutely,
there's a good. So I know one of the other themes that we're going to be talking about is fearlessness in her life and lyrics. So can you just introduce that topic to us as well, fearlessness?
Absolutely. So for me personally, to even just sit here, this is scary to talk to all of you about this, and think about it in the perspective of Taylor Swift, who's a little older than me, so basically my age, and she's getting up every day, and not only is she singing in front of people, which I can't imagine, but also singing about her life and her faults and her heartbreak and the things that have made her question if she should have done something different, if how she could have handled something better, and to be that type of vulnerable in front of so many people, I think that's exactly how she got to be, where she is.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of what we hope in this series is kind of our own self-reflection. She's re-recorded some of her earlier songs. Can you tell more about that? Because I think as she reflected on what she had said earlier, it wasn't what she intended to communicate, or maybe she had a change of mind. And I think our own self-reflection is important, right?
Absolutely. So the idea of her re-records is another example of both being resilient and being courageous. What happened to her was because she wrote her own songs, and it's basically essentially her diary she puts out with every album she releases, she had, when she was signed to her record label back when she was 15, you just want to do anything you can do to be signed, right? Like you're willing to sign your whatever you need to do to be a product of a massive label like she was. And at the time she signed that she released her rights to her music. And so what happened was, as her music became more and more popular, it obviously generated more and more revenue for that record label. And so what they did was they sold her masters, meaning her words, her music, the way the songs produced, etc., to another company for a boatload of money. And all she had asked was that she have the opportunity to purchase the music first. And the company the record label did not give her that option. She found out about it when the general public found out about it. And it was such a turning point in her career, because for her, it wasn't a business transaction. It was her life, her stories being sold without her knowledge. And so what she did is she went back into the recording studios and she re-recorded all 6 or 7 albums that had been sold. And she produced them the same way they had been produced years prior. And she had thought of this as more of like a passion project. She did not expect anyone to purchase an album that had been previously released and people have already known the words, and there's no anticipation of what is it going to sound like. And so when she re-released her first album, it was met with her fans saying, not only are we going to repurchase these albums, we're only going to listen to what's called Taylor's version, which is the ones she owns. And so she took a huge chance. She was willing to lose plenty of money in this just so that she could own her music and her lyrics. And it's turned out, it's been the catalyst for the Eras Tour, which is why she's in the public like she is now. She's I think a year and a half into a massive world tour that sells out in minutes, and she plays like 3.5 hours, anywhere from 45 to 50 songs in those 3.5 hours. And she's the only member on the stage that doesn't have a break. Her longest break is like maybe a minute while she's getting a outfit change. And so her dancers, her musicians, everybody on stage gets at least a song or two break, but she's out there for the entirety of the concert, which speaks to her work ethic, and it speaks to how hard she recognizes the ability that the effort people put forth, because to get to these concerts, it's not easy. These concerts sell out in minutes. And then, I, for example, went through quite a bit of effort to get to Amsterdam. So it required a lot of effort on my part, and she recognizes that and basically says, she'll be out there for the entirety of that show, which is really, really cool to see.
Mm-hmm. And one of the themes that I think we're going to be touching on in the next couple of weeks is owning your own story. Because so many times people want to write our story for us. And she wanted to make sure that she could be the author of her story.
Exactly.
And so one last thing, today we have communion, and it's a way in which we show unity in our church body. And so just let's talk about how she unifies people, especially, again, across languages, ages, nationalities, races. So can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So I think probably the fact that she's remained so authentic to who she begun her career as is one of the largest factors to how she's unified her fans. She engages very actively with her fans, more so before this whole Eras Tour, when she really, her popularity really skyrocketed. But she would invite her fans to her home and have what they called secret sessions, where people would go to her actual homes and listen to the album before it was released, and she would bake them cookies and things like that. And then also what she'll do is she always will comment on social media, like if she sees somebody, she likes an idea, a costume that someone came to the concert in, she'll comment or like it to show that she's actively engaging with her fans. And then more recently, because of this, I would equate, my sister and I have talked about this, when you think of Taylor Swift at this point, she's no longer a person, which is crazy to say. It's almost like her own brand. I would equate it to more like Disney or Marvel or something like that, because the fans that follow her have taken their own paths. And one of the things her fans have done is in a song she sang, talks about making friendship bracelets. And what her fans have done is, in preparation for these concerts, they make hundreds of friendship bracelets, and with the intent to trade them with other concert goers. And they'll trade them with, when I was in Amsterdam, I saw a police dog who was there guarding the place, and the dog had friendship bracelets up his paw, because they kept giving the dog friendship bracelets. And so it gives this sense of community, this sense of belonging, which is an awful lot like communion in a church, and that unity that it provides.
And just to reveal what we plan to do, Erin has ordered and has a friendship bracelet with Jordan UCC on for each of us. It's a gift from Erin to all of us. And so as you're leaving, when Erin and I are greeting you, get a friendship bracelet, and you can tell all of your Methodist and Lutheran and Catholic friends, look what we got in church today. What did they give to you? Any closing comments?
I just want to say thank you to Dr. Smith. I never, ever thought I'd be sitting up here talking to all of you in a church setting about Taylor Swift. I know a lot of you from a professional standpoint, and so this is not something I talk about often. And then I happened to mention to Dr. Smith that I was away while he was on sabbatical. So see what happens when he's on sabbatical.
Come up with these crazy ideas.
But I want to commend you for your ability to think outside the box and to challenge the status quo, because I'm sure there are plenty of churches in the area and in the world congregating on a Sunday morning, and they're not speaking about Taylor Swift. And so the fact that you're able to do this is fantastic, especially considering you don't listen to her music.
Right. Well, and again, just what are people hearing, and the people who are not in our pews, and how can we make that connection between our faith and their influence? So, and a little bit of a word of thanks to you, I want to give you this brand new, not available in any stores, cooler that you can use, a handy dandy cooler. You'll all have one later, but Erin's going to be the first one to have one. I don't even have one, so.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.